I'm introducing the internship for both of you, and I'll start just by telling you the subject areas. One is animation. So, Purity, you're going to be working on the animation line of work, and Nelly, you'll work on the UX UI line of work. So, they're two different clients, two different projects, and I'll guide you through it to begin with, of course. But the internship is 3 months, which means in the course of the 3 months, you're going to work on several jobs for Purity in the animation line, and for uh, Nelly, it will be in the UX UI line. Um, so I'll start off with the one with Purity. It's called Ecotales. Ecotales is actually a working name that we're using with the client because the client hasn't yet come up with a name for his campaign. But it's an animated journey to a cleaner tomorrow. I'll explain it, but it involves the development of animation for, um, you can say, for viewing on TikTok, as well as creating comics. All right, so it has um, this kind of challenge. For Nelly, yours will be a bit different. I'll explain it, but it's designing a UX UI for a startup company. You'll start with two. I've introduced you to one, but I'll go over it with you in some more detail so you can understand what to do. And then, of course, I'll introduce the other one, which needs to be done. Okay, so the meeting is not long, and what I want to introduce to you is the general scope of work, and then what exactly you need to do. And I'll give you the material to support you, and then you go ahead and work. But I'll also give you the guideline so that you know exactly how to go around doing it. But the meeting is at least to introduce the scope of work and exactly what you're supposed to do. The exact guidelines will follow in writing. All right. All right. So from where we left it, the first step, as we did last week, was for you to make sure you have your books and you bind them. How I want you to present your work at the end is to write your log journal, which is like 12 pages. So it's 1 week, 1 page per week. So you'll have 12 weeks, therefore 12 pages of your logbook. It has a cover sheet, right? So that's one, you can say, aspect of the document. But your entire study, your entire IBL external, has its own cover page. All right, so there's a cover page for your journal, then there's a cover page for where you're working. That one is a questionnaire that assesses you in general. So the cover sheet for your logbook isn't to do with your assessment, it's just your details. The cover sheet on top of that, it can even come at the back actually. Let's say it comes at the back, is your assessment. Your assessment by way of, but it's your assessment based on you working now in a company. So it's your trainer who signs against it and your supervisor who signs against it. Okay, so that sheet, you have to be clear, comes at the back. So those are 3 documents already. There's your logbook, which is 12 pages. There's the cover sheet of the logbook, which is 1 page. Then comes your assessment, which is a 3rd document that comes at the end of that. And then comes the assessment of the company, that is where you're doing your IBL. And UK wants to ascertain that the company where you're doing your IBL is sufficient or good enough for the kind of study that you're doing. There has to be some kind of congruence between your IBL and what you studied. Okay, so that's the last page. And those are a total of 4 documents. You should be mindful that you have these 4 documents, not to leave out one, because they need signing. Okay, so that's how you end. I'll ask you to scan everything that you write on. Okay, you scan it so that we have them as a PDF. So you scan, compile as a PDF, and then you share. All right. The thing not to do is to give in the document without a copy of it. And the best copy you can have for purposes of sharing is the scanned one, because it's easy to email that to me, to maybe a course tutor, and then to hand in a physical copy, which can be the original now. It's okay because you've scanned it. you can now hand that into the school. But as a general rule, the original is yours. So you're supposed to keep the original, but you hand in the copy to the school. If you can afford it, then that's great. Okay, so that's the order of things that need to be done. Now, because you started, let's say, let's look at the schedule. You started last week, which is like today's 18th. So let's say you started on the, let's say 11th. Then you would count 8 days from that. But there has to be documentary evidence. So what I want to recommend is, just for the sake of trying to fit this into the time frame, I'd recommend that I'm going to give you 2 weeks of work to do. Now, the work which you need to document in your journal for last week, and the work which you need to document in your journal for this coming week. Okay? So that will help you to at least have information for the first week, which can be recognized and graded against your IBL. All right? It just means working a bit harder to try to get that done. So that's number one. Number two, we'll be meeting on Thursdays at this time for 1 hour. Today it may be 45 minutes, but we'll meet every Thursday for the purpose of this kind of follow-up, which I need us to be doing. Also, when you fill up your journal 1 page, you need your trainer, who is me, for both of you, to sign. I also have to write my part. So I'd like you to scan it, and if you scan everything, so everything's inside, and you type into it, that's the best. That's what I would do. But if you're writing by hand, you write by hand, it's fine. Then scan it, send it to me. I will type in whatever I have to type in. So that's how we work. If you give it to me week by week, it's better. Then I can, respond to you every week in terms of information that requires my signature. I would pass it on to your supervisor, who is also within the company. You've not met him yet, but I'll organize that. But I'll pass it on to them to take a look at, and then they can write in and comment. Your supervisors, I'll try and get them in next week, but you have different supervisors. So there's one for the UX UI and another one for the animation. So they look at different things. So I'm responsible for looking at the substance of your work as a creative, as someone who's solving problems as they work, producing an outcome that's aligned to the message of the client. But the supervisor is concerned that you're following the company regulations, you're fitting into the policy, you're doing things in a professional way, things like that. Timeliness of work, things like those. Okay, so I'll explain more about those as we go. So the IBL tries to capture that, because these are not things you learn in the context of internal IBL or in classrooms. When you're doing a unit, you don't learn these things. So these are the things that they try to capture within the IBL. Okay, now what happens is that your grades, all of them, have to be compiled by the end of, let's say, September, to be safe, for the purpose of graduation. So early October, first week of October is fine. In fact, if you started on the 10th of July, you count 10th of August, 10th of September, 10th of October. That's when you officially finish your internship, which is on time. It's just on time for you to graduate in terms of processing your grades. But the university allows you to do 8 weeks as a minimum. So we will grade you after 8 weeks, which means on 10th of September, you'll be assessed. That first week of September, you'll be assessed. And that assessment will go towards your grade for external IBL for graduation. It's within the scope of the policy of the university, so that's fine. But you can carry on with your IBL until you finish, but that's optional now, you see. But you can carry on, and by end of, let's say, October 10th, you'll have finished 3 months, which is the duration of your IBL. Right? So that kind of gives you a sense of your trajectory, what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that's key. The other thing is that this is a paid IBL. Normally, with this company, we bring on students on a paid IBL. And the reason is we put you on work that is paying. The client is paying for the jobs. So when the client pays, we apportion part of the pay towards you. But these are new clients I've put you on. So what I'll do is within the first 2 weeks, I'll get a sense of what the schedule of payment is like. Because normally clients don't pay upfront everything. They pay according to work you've done, and we have a schedule that governs that. It's in a contract. So I'll see what the contracts look like within the first 2 weeks. Then I'll be able to give you a sense of how much you get paid. All right. Now, interns generally get paid on a per project basis, generally, which means you can earn more than you ordinarily would if, let's say, you were locked into a salary or something that's, sometimes companies just say, we'll give you a stipend. That stipend is to cover your expenses. So, but when you do it as a per project basis, then we have a category we call interns, and you'll get something based on that. Some projects pay more, some pay less, but I'll share that information with you within about 2 weeks from today. Okay, so that gives you a sense of at least your expectations by way of pay, and also by way of schedule. The reason why we pay, though, is not out of the love. It's not because we love our students or interns so much that we pay them. It's because we want you to take it seriously. You see, that's the same reason for which the client's willing to pay, because the client knows that if you're going to seriously work on their work, they have to pay for it. So that makes everybody kind of alert and come to the table. So I would want you to be equally serious. So we would pay you as such. So that's one. The second is that it also gives us a real sense of how you respond to serious work. Serious work is paid work. Because if you do respond in a good way, then we would then offer you, we would carry on the relationship. I mean, once you're done with, let's say, your internship, we'll invite you to become an apprentice with us. And apprenticeship can last from 6 months to 1 year, or even 2 years, just depends. But as an apprentice now, you are put on probational terms. Probation is 6 months. And if we feel you're good, then we carry on like that. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. So we will. So that's the kind of thing. So you start off as an intern 3 months, you become an apprentice 6 months, and that, you see, after 6 months of probation, we will know whether we're keeping you or not. And if we are, then we put you on a renewable contract for 1 year. That 1 year, after let's say after 6 months, your probation would have ended. So you would have started now the second 6 months of your apprenticeship. And that period, if you do well and everything, you can get promoted to what we now call an associate animator, or an associate, let's say, interaction designer. So in the worst case, well, I shouldn't say worst case, but in the common case scenario, people stay as apprentices for 6 months to 1 year. So they stay like that, and then after that you become this associate again for roughly 1 to 2 years. 2 years is common, and then from there you become a senior animator, or a lead animator, or a lead interaction designer. A lead interaction designer or a lead animator simply is someone who knows the process and works with others. So you have a team that works under you when you're a lead. You can become a lead within about 3 years to 5 years, 3 to 5 years. And then from there you become a senior animator, and then from there you can become an animation director. And the same for interaction designer. You can become a senior interaction designer, or seasoned interaction designer, and then move on and become what we would say is software engineer, or interaction engineer, one of those. Okay, so So it gives you a sense of your trajectory, okay? And we try to give earnings according to that. So generally in Bank and Tank, a lot of the earnings are influenced by the project. So even if we retain you, we'll give you a retainer, and then that's just a retainer, a flat figure to keep you. But we would then pay you extra on a per project basis. So those are worked out and written into a contract, so you know that this is what it is. All right. So it's a beginning. It gives you a beginning. Now, yeah, if you feel free to ask questions. By the way, if you have anything you'd like to ask, just I'll invite you to ask because we're small. We're only three of us. So if you feel there's something that I'm speaking about that is not clear, you can ask. The other thing then I would then move to is to explain the yeah, I think I'd explain then the first job, which will apply to purity, and I'll share my screen just so that you can get a sense of what it is that is the scope of work. I'm presenting now. All right. So the scope of work involves this, you can say, brand. It's a brand really called Ecotales. It's an animated journey to a cleaner tomorrow. That's the theme. And what's needed in terms of work is, you can say, an animation production, which I'm just thinking out loud now. Yeah, it requires an animated production, it requires a comic, and it requires TikTok memes. It requires all three. Okay. Now it's a new client and they've just come in. I want to explain a bit about the client background, just so that you have some sense. The client is a trust. It's a trust that's local here in Kenya, and they're concerned about improving the country. Really, they're concerned about that. And they're looking at it futuristically. So, how can they improve the country by influencing young people to look at the future brightly and to do the right things for a better tomorrow in Kenya? Okay. So, this production essentially targets young people as people under the age of 28. That's essentially Generation Z. That's who they're targeting, Generation Z. However, Generation Z influences Generation Alpha, so it's both. Okay, but the primary audience is Generation Z and Generation Alpha, which is 0 to 12 years old. They're also part of the scope of the target market. So the primary target market then would be 13 to 28-year-olds, and the secondary target market would be, let's say, we can say, let's just say 3-year-olds to 12-year-olds. Okay, we'll discuss this in more detail, but that gives you a sense of the audience. What do they mean by, a cleaner tomorrow? The trust is concerned that in cities in Kenya, like Nairobi, Nakuru, Eldoret, Kisumu, Mombasa, there's a lot of littering going on. And they've observed that the county councils are not able to clean up the littering. The problem is beyond what they can manage. The problem is also caused by people, just the people who live there. They're not sensitized, they're not educated to be mindful about littering the place with garbage. So they're asking the question, how can we change that? So that's an attitudinal change. They're trying to effect some kind of cultural or behavioral change in people so that they stop littering. That's what they want to do. So what they recognized is that by re-educating, let's say, the public, this change can come. To change old people or people who are somewhat fixed in their ways is more effort, more money, and it's not likely that you'll achieve. It's not guaranteed you'll achieve the change. But with young people, you have a better chance. The real target then becomes Generation Alpha. But because they believe they can influence the behavior of Generation Z, and at the same time, Generation Z influences or affects Generation Alpha. If they can sensitize Generation Z on how to, on let's say the problems of littering the environment and the benefits of not doing it, then they will stop. But beyond that, they want to influence Generation Alpha. So they don't want to influence them directly. They want to create a kind of activism amongst Generation Z so that Generation Z themselves are activists or advocates of a cleaner environment. And they're the ones now who explain this to Generation Alpha. And they're the ones also who prevent Generation Alpha from littering. So this is the whole thing. There are two things that you want to achieve. One is behavioral change within a person, that's within Generation Z, and you want to create activists or advocates for a cleaner environment within Generation Z. So that's the goal, if you can understand that. Now, after many discussions, we've sort of settled on producing a limited animation series. It may not be limited, but at least it will be an animation series. And the series will run for several episodes. The client will fund episode 1 and look towards funding future episodes depending on the outcomes of episode 1. Okay, so the animation production is in some ways the lead. In other words, the core information for the episode will influence the comic. A 13-minute episode can support 3 comics, roughly. In other words, the episode of 13 minutes should have at least 3 thematic things about it. Even if we say the beginning is one part, and then the middle is another part, and the ending is another part. But you can have 3 running stories simultaneous. It's up to you how you design it. Then we have the comic, which is similar to the animation, but not exactly the same. What the comic does is that it reinforces the theme in the animation. By reinforcing the theme, you can advance it. You see, because if you have hanging questions, for example, you can answer some of those questions, let's say, in the comic. If you have, let's say, the possibility of having side stories that emerge from the animation, some of those side stories can be explored in the comic. You can also repeat what went on in the production, but from a different perspective on the comic. We don't want to create redundancy. Redundancy is created when you repeat exactly the same thing, but we want to reinforce. So anyone who liked the cartoon can extend their reading on the comic. This comic will not be printed. It's an interactive comic, which means it will be hosted online and shared with people, on their devices. They can go through it. It's a comic, like something that can be printed, but it won't be printed. It will be instead viewed in a gallery where you can go through it frame by frame. All right, so that gives you a sense of the 2 jobs which are there, but we start with the production of the animation and then we follow through with the comic. And then finally comes TikTok. So TikTok is seen as a primary channel or platform for sharing information with Generation Z, because Generation Z is active on TikTok. But TikTok is indicative of social media. So as much as they're on TikTok, they'll also be on Instagram and YouTube and any other. It could also be Facebook. But TikTok is the flagship. The idea is to use TikTok to create advocacy. Advocacy is when a young person feels they want to engage other young people, and they engage them by sharing content, by getting them to produce more content around that content, by making comments, selecting likes, hearts, things like those. So in terms of the application or distribution of this information, there'll be analytics that we will go through to try to see to what extent the engagement is taking place. However, when you produce it, you have to be mindful that the goal of the TikTok production, the clip, is to create engagement. So it has to be produced in a way that will create that engagement. The animation can also do a bit of that. It can, because the animation can be made available on TikTok, but it's broader than that. The animation might be more viewed on YouTube. It might be. And then we have the comics, which will have their own platform. So, so these are the three things that we're doing. Now, in some ways, what we're doing is not usually done. We're working with what we call transmedia. Transmedia is where you cut across different media in order to get your message out. And we're giving equal primacy to each one of these mediums. In other words, in spite of the fact that it might take more effort and work to produce the animation, but the comic is as equally prominent as the animation. And the TikTok clips are also equally prominent. So really, it's not a single medium production. It needs to be produced with all three mediums in mind. That's the idea. Okay? And the first episode, which will have the first three comics, and you could say the first set of memes, are the ones that will determine whether the client will fund the second round, like the second episode of you can say of the production. Okay. If you have questions on that, Purity, this is what you're working on. Let me know. I'll come to what you do exactly in a minute, but I'll go through more detail about this before I do that. Is there anything you might want to ask on this? I don't hear you. Maybe you're speaking with your mic on.
Can you expand more on the episode parts? What do you mean?
Your voice is very faint, Purity. I can't hear.
I'm saying, hello.
Yes.
When you talk of one episode,
Yes.
it's supposed to like come up with a comic. Like how large or how big? Do you mean it's like, let's say like 2 pages of like one episode equals 2 pages of a comic, or what do you mean exactly?
Okay, I'll explain. So remember the three things. One is an animation, which is like 13 minutes, 1 3. Second is a comic, and then comes the memes. The comic is 16 pages, but that includes the front and back cover, which is, the front outside and front inside and back outside, back inside. So those are 4 pages already. The inside pages are 12. That's the size of the comic. The physical size of the comic, if you printed it as a PDF, let's say, would be A4. Okay, that's if you print it, and it's in color. So, and we're talking of three of them, three. Okay, so that's the work. You're not going to work on this alone, by the way. You're going to work with a team. It's roughly 10 other people, I think, or 9 other people. I need to confirm that with you, but I'll confirm it as we go. But you're involved in it, and I'll show you some of the work the other team members have done, and then you will now need to do something so that you catch up with them, and they will come in and you'll work together on this. So it's a team of now roughly 10 people. Okay, you could say 11 if you include me, then we're roughly 11, but that's the size. So let me start here with the story. The storyline, and I'm going to explain in more detail exactly what the comic is, but I'll start with the lead item, which is the animation itself. So the story outline, the concept, first of all, Ecotales is more of a brand. It's like a product, really, that we're trying to create. But because it cuts across different media, the treatment will be like a brand. We need to come up with a logo type for it. It's not urgent now, but it's something that you need to have oversight of, because it's something I'm going to put in your deliverables. Come up with a logo for Ecotales. Okay, that name may change, but still we can start to think it through and come up with something visual. This first episode is, well, Ecotales. This first episode is not called A Journey into a Cleaner Tomorrow. It's not called that necessarily, but that's the thematic area of, you can say, season 1 of Ecotales. So if season 1 is a limited series, let's say 3 episodes, then those 3 episodes are called An Animated Journey into a Cleaner Tomorrow. Episode 1 would have its unique name. That unique name will depend on the story that's approved by the client. That then we'll know, because that story will have its own name. Okay? So this is conceptualization we're starting with, or ideation. Ideation is where we come up with a story. So you can see the objective. The objective is twofold, really. I've written it here and I'm going to share this with you, but I'm explaining what's written. The first objective you have to remember is to sensitize young people, they're the target audience, to sensitize them about the importance of keeping a clean environment for health reasons, for improvement of livelihoods, things like that, even for security reasons. So not littering has its advantages. It also sensitizes them on the disadvantages to do with disease, to do with, you can say, uh, attracting the wrong type of crowd around garbage dumps, you know, things like that. So it has its disadvantages, it has its advantages. Okay? The objective, number one, is to sensitize the young, and that's an educative objective. The second objective is to create activists out of them. The second objective is to do with what we call the advocacy for creating greener living environments. That advocacy is the activism. What we want is for the audience to feel a sense of ownership about the message so that they take it very personally and influence other young people to not litter the environment. A bit like what happened with Generation Z in the politics, where they're feeling a sense of ownership in the political space and they're now trying to advocate for change, transformative change. It's a bit like that. Now we want to create the same, you can say, transformative change, but in the environment by being mindful of it, that sort of thing. And we've got to work in a way that picks, you can say, the real pain points. Like when flooding happened or rain happened too much and then the roads were flooded. The reason was the drainage systems were blocked by garbage. And that blockage meant that um, the whole city was you could not live in it. It was inhabitable. You had to find your way of going across town. So that is troublesome, and we need to think it through. But beyond flooding, there are many other reasons why you don't want to live in a garbage dump. So those are the things, and we want to bring them out clearly. Okay. So that's the overview. All right. The overview I've given. We're not doing storybooks as such or print media, but we're going to work on online comics, and the online comics will be distributed on our website. It will be an interactive website since on an interactive medium. And then we're going to also produce, you can say, memes. The memes are like 1 minute memes. It could even be less. But the memes should be interesting. We'll discuss them in a minute. So the production, 30 minutes, and it generally has about 5 characters. 2 are main characters, 3 are support characters. There might be other featured characters, but that depends on the episode. But the common characters will be about 5 that cut across. Maximum. I mean, it can be even less. It's up to us how we design it. So the page count, as I said, for the comic is 16 pages, but that includes the outside and inside front and back cover. If you take only the inside pages, then it's 12 pages. The size is A4. The colors are full color. The entire comic is full color. The size, well, A4 size is 210 by 297 millimeters. It'll be portrait. But remember, the output is not necessarily a PDF. It's not really an A4 PDF, but this gives you some layout parameters to help you to lay it out. So the cover will be made of matte art paper, a bit thicker than the inside pages. The inside pages will maybe use 80 grams bond, which is like photocopy paper, like that, if we print. But again, the client has said to me, we're not printing. So that line is out actually. And there's no binding. Yeah, so all these 3 things here, these 3 sections are out because there's no printing. Animation production details, it's 2D, and we will use the rotoscoping workflow, which involves 3D, 2D, but that's what we're thinking as a style. The format that was discussed was a mini series. So if you do a full series, A full series for season 1 would be like 13 episodes, something like that, or 12 episodes. But a mini series would be 7 episodes or 6. A limited series would be 3 episodes. So we're not yet fixed on that. Funding is not there for these episodes, but if we take the long-term view, we can assume it will be a full series, but the clients might be willing to fund a limited series. A limited series is like 3 episodes, 3. So we can aim for that to make it realistic for the client. So I'll change this and just indicate that it's actually a limited series rather than a mini series. A mini series is like 7 episodes. All right, and then comes 12 minutes per episode. Usually that's the standard, or 13 minutes. Okay, so that's about now the production itself. And then the comic will be produced as what we call interactive storybook. I've written it down here. The interactive storybooks would be on a website, which is clickable and designed in a way that makes it interesting to follow. We'll discuss it more, but that's what we're thinking for the comic. It'll be an online comic. And then we come to animated shorts. These animated shorts are going to be distributed on TikTok. Each short is about 1 minute, maybe 45 seconds. And they carry interesting messages. Now, the TikTok format should be gamified. When I say that, I mean we introduce challenges for which those who score high scores will be rewarded. But the reward is just coming in the sense of points, that so and so has gotten these points, for this week's challenge, and so got these many points for the next week's challenge. The challenge, because we're on TikTok, can be just views. Who got the most views? But how do we do that? We need to think of a challenge in this way. You want to create advocacy, and we're using TikTok as the main tool for creating, for making activists of young people. We're saying that littering is bad, and it has benefits when you prevent it. So we can have a challenge this week that is to, let's say, declutter Eastlands. All right, it could be that. So if you're decluttering Eastlands, then using TikTok, how would you do it? We can suggest you can come up with a meme based on a style that we give. It can be, we can choose a song, for example, and do a kind of sing-along thing where you come up with your own tagline and you come up with a song which people will sing along with, and it should be based on decluttering Eastlands. You see. Now, the one that gets the most likes is the winner for that week. Next week, we have another theme. The other theme might be something different. It could be something like, let's say, doing something good in your environment or doing something good in your hood. So a title like good in your hood can be tight. So that good in your hood challenge is open. People now produce clips. Again, if we want it to be based on a song, it's fine, but we can also change that. We can just say you produce a kind of spoken word. So your spoken word, you can rant for no more than 3 minutes, and the one with the most likes, again, is the winner. The winner is obviously going to be published and put up nicely. Everyone knows this is the winner for good in your hood. So these are challenges. We need to think of different challenges that we can come up for, let's say, TikTok, that can be interesting enough for Generation Z to participate in. And they'll use TikTok's tools and features to produce whatever it is they're producing. The idea is simply to be the winner, right? There's no cash prize. The idea isn't so much to give a cash prize. If you give a cash prize, it kind of changes the whole thinking around it. But we want to have people who are interested in their environment being clean taking part in it. So we need to encourage them to do it. So the incentive should not be cash. It should be, I want to live in a clean environment. Okay. So I've written here a number of strategies. These are framework, let's say, approaches to what we're doing. For example, educational, there must be an educational angle to all this. So if you're doing a TikTok meme, it must have an educational benefit. In other words, there's something you're going to learn by simply producing that meme. So we say this is a challenge, and this one's called Good in the Hood challenge. What is the educational utility? I should be able to answer that. In the case of Good in Your Hood, it might be that it's a useful way of getting people to be sensitized about doing good in their own area. And this can translate itself into some sort of activism where they encourage others to do the same thing. But we have to word it like that. We have to make the challenge instructions in such a way that people are going to become activists, making other people do good in the hood. The distribution and accessibility. So distribution is just looking at different formats. Like the platforms we're talking about might be, let's say, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, that kind of thing, or even Facebook. But then when we look at the accessibility, we're looking at the human condition and to what extent can they access what you're showing them. A normal person should be able to, but once you have challenges, disability challenges, then that reduces access. And we don't want to make it such that people with disabilities cannot access. There's an aspect of community engagement. So this problem of littering cities is caused by the community, and we're asking how can we engage the community themselves so that they don't, or they're sensitized about not littering the environment. So that is another aspect. We have to have a strategy that's clear on that. So phase one, story development, is about 3 months. That has already started. The second one is the animation production, which takes 8 months. I think that's about fair, depending on the skills of the people. And then you have phase four, the community engagement, events, and workshops, 6 to 12 months. These can happen concurrently. For example, you don't have to wait to finish episode 1 of the animation to start episode 2. That can be worked out in the workflow. So that's not such an issue. So, but this gives you a sense of the work now. We're going through scope of work. Okay. It has a budget, and then here we have the expected outcomes. Increased environmental awareness and responsibility among young people, not really children. And then we have tangible reduction in littering incidences in targeted communities. In other words, we have to be able to measure the reduction. So we'll be gathering data and doing some analytical analysis of that data. And then positive community feedback and engagement. And the proposed story outline is this one. Let me read you out the outline. So this story was written by another group that has worked on this, come up with a story. So an animated journey for a cleaner tomorrow represents a dynamic approach to addressing environmental challenges in Kenyan cities. By combining storytelling and animation, we aim to captivate young minds, fostering a generation that actively participates in preserving and enhancing the beauty of the environment. We look forward to discussing and detailing or discussing the detailed strategy and garnering your support for this impactful initiative. So that's not really a proposed story outline. That's not a story outline. But these are characters. One is Kai. Kai is the protagonist, the hero. Lila is the supporting character, Kai's friend. Gara is the bad guy, the antagonist. And then Nia is the guide facilitator. Right? Guide is almost like the commentary, the one who does the voiceover narrative for the narrator. So Ecotales is a 16-page comic, and what they've done is indicated the kind of theme that you'll find on page 1 and 2 of Ecotales. So in summary, this is really an introduction to Ecotales. Page 3 and 4 now builds up the conflict that exists between the antagonist and the protagonist. The call for adventure 5 and 6, this one is now more about what you can say is the hero encountering the villain and losing the fights or losing whatever they're trying to do with the villain. So it shows how the problem is big and the villain is quite strong. Discovering artifacts of power. So here, Kai finds some magic potion or magic thing that enables him to have that capacity to take on the bad people, the ones who are ruining the environment. So the antagonist interference, this is now coming up to the climax where there's a big fight and Kai wins, essentially. And then comes the message, the moral at the end. We say that's page 11 and 12, the journey and the challenges. All right, that's just something there which helps to pass on some message, and there's a lot of education taking place there. Here it goes on. I see there's another one here, the final countdown. So the final countdown, the climax, is actually page 13 to 14. And then the transformation and conclusion is 15 and 16, where the transformation happens. Okay, that's the comic. Here we have the animation plot. It has Act 1. Act 1 is the setup, but what I mean by this is that we introduce all the key characters, they interact, and from there now comes the problem. We see what the problem is in its context, and even a solution is suggested within the context in that setup. Under confrontation, things escalate. The good guys fighting the bad guys, and the bad guys are winning. So they see there's a mountain to climb in terms of solving the problem for the good guys. And resolution is after the climax. So at the end of Act 2, they have this big fight, and the winners are the good guys for the environment, and they resolve with the bad people what to do next. So they make rules to prevent this from happening again. Okay, that gives you a sense, and then there's a conclusion. I'll share this document with you so that you have it, and I need to just discuss what is needed from you, Purity, especially this week on Ecotales. Now, from you, we need you. I'll have to show you what has been done. What has been done is to conceive the characters. They've been conceived. What's also been done is to draw the comic. It's been drawn. And there's a story. So I'll share those with you, done by the group. Client has yet to approve them, but I will share them with you so that you can weigh in. What we need, though, is something that comes before the comic and before the animation, even before the TikToks. And what that is like a storyboard. A storyboard comes before the actual animation. So we need a storyboard out of you. That's for the production. For the comic, we normally have a script, a comic script that informs the comic book itself. So you have to work backwards to prepare a script. That's what we need. Okay. And then finally, the TikTok memes, each meme will require its own storyboard so that we have clarity of what we're doing. Yeah. If we don't have that clarity, complications come with the client. All right. So let me share with you that just so that you're familiar with it while we're here. I'm just sharing. Okay. I'm going to share this with you. But what I'm showing you now is the animation script. Let's take a look at that. It's written using a filmic format, but there was a group of 9 who sat together and they came up with this script. Yeah. The idea is for you to go through it to be familiar. It's just like a trailer. It's not even an episode. It's just a beginning. So go through that and be familiar with it. The second thing I'll give you is a comic strip. It's a comic strip script. So this is the script now for the comic. A comic script, which is different from an animation script, this one describes the panels. It describes the panel in this paragraph. It also indicates what kind of speech you're going to tell. Like sometimes you want thought bubbles. Other times you want someone shouting. You may want that. Other times it's a strong sound effect. So it describes what you see on the panel. That's the second sentence that will do that. Okay. And then it also has the speech written down for each frame. Okay. So that's what would comprise panel 1. The description. You can say the way the words are used, either as thoughts or as exclamations or something like that. And then, of course, comes now the third element, which is now to indicate I've just forgotten what I was saying. So there are three elements anyway for the panel. You need a description. You need to have a statement of text treatment. Yeah, but the other treatment that's needed is the sound effects. So maybe that's what I was missing. So sound effects is needed to be enhanced as well. So you have to be clear on what is the sound effect. Even if it's for print, you'll find that the sound effects are written in. Right, so again, go through this to familiarize yourself now with what we're saying are the script for the comic. Then I'm going to give you another document here for TikTok. These are scripts for TikTok memes. The idea is just to go through it. The user stories right here. So go through these user stories and make sure that they are coherent, they make sense, and you think you can animate them. The next one is the storyboard. So once you've done your storyline and your script, then you can proceed from the script to go to your storyboard. So this is a rough storyboard that was produced. I didn't have much problems with it because the framing is good, the expressions on the faces are clear, and they've tried to maintain that throughout. Yeah. But so if you're going to do something with this, you might want to think it through. What can you add to the storyboard to make it unique? This one is the comic book. It's a comic book one. Sample. This is the comic book sample. So this artist has produced this sort of work from the character models, and he's come up with a sample like this one. I think this is good. This one is good. So I was quite happy with this. Okay. All right. So this one has started with the learner statement, followed by the acceptance criteria. You don't need to write those, but he's written them. And it's not one for everyone. Yeah, he seems to only have one acceptance criteria and one user story statement. And that's not right. I suspect he's even used the example. No, he hasn't. Okay. And then we have the animation models. So we have some models here. These models you're looking at now are underage because we're looking at kids that are over the age of, let's say, 12. So this one might be a bit too young, that one. He's using the 3D content creator. Here's another one, again too young, and another one. Okay. I think I left it somewhere. Yeah. Let's look at this one. These are the comic book characters. They look like this. Okay. Yeah, this one's not complete. You need to have like character poses. So the front view is fine. The side view is fine. You need a 3/4 view that's missing. And this is the only character that he's done that with. These other ones only have front views. All right. And then you see this guy doesn't look Kenyan. Your characters should look Kenyan when you draw them. Black skin doesn't make you look Kenyan. There are other things that make you look like the part. Okay. All right. So here we have this one, TikTok memes. Let's check it out. Now, this artist has done a user flow like that. And then like this. So what happens on TikTok is that you want them to, first of all, aggregate your content so they have it. Then you want them to curate it, which means remove what you don't like, add what you don't like, and then to share. So that's the typical. path for Facebook. Okay, so that's the scope of work for you, Nelly. Do you have questions on it? Anything you'd like to share?
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm saying it's like different people have done different things. It's like you see someone, a different person has done a storyboard, then another one has done the script.
Yeah.
So is it like, I don't know, I don't understand. Is it like they all work on something, or it's one person that works on a particular part of the whole thing?
They all work together. So what they did is they sat together and brainstormed as a group, and then divided themselves. They were a group of 9. They divided themselves into 3 parts. One part worked on, or one group worked on the production, the animation. The second group worked on the um, comic, and the third group worked on the TikTok. But they agreed on the baseline issues. What is the main theme, the main story, and then of course things like characters. They had to agree on characters. So they all worked like that. Things look the way they do because they need to harmonize. So when you find that they've done something that's acceptable across, we need to harmonize them so that when you watch the movie, you don't want to feel as if you don't need to read the comic. The comic should have other information, should extend. And then comes now the TikTok, which should be also different. So that harmonization has not done, but that's why you're here. Your job is largely on harmonization. How can you make this one story? For example, you'll read the comic and you'll see what the theme is. Um, Once you see the theme, watch the movie or go through the movie, let's say storyboard, and see whether it's reflected. You might find there's overlap, some things are not. You can correct all that and then produce a storyboard using storyboarder so that we have that the anonymity of storyboarder is good. So you show your characters there with storyboarder, and you show what they are saying they want to show using storyboarder for the animation, and then also show it how it would work using again storyboarder for the memes, and then you can come down to the everything else to show how it can be used for print media. Okay, so your job is to harmonize by producing a storyboard for the production, producing what we can call is it's like an instruction sheet because you don't produce storyboards for memes, but you do have instructions on exactly how you want this thing to go. It's like a mini storyboard for each meme, something tiny, small in terms of volume. It's not big. And then after that, you want to produce the yeah. Those are the two things. So once you've harmonized using the storyboard or storyboarder, then people can even weigh in and suggest changes to it. But at least you have a template, and that template is what we want to start with. And also, I can share a template with the client, even though it may need my explanation, but we can share it. Okay, I hope it kind of answers your question.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Um, so just to be clear, you need to go through the material I've sent, and I'll send it to you so that you can go through it and come up with your version of the storyboard. You can share with me a rough so that I can see. Okay, this is okay. For the production. The production takes the lead. So you want to have 3 thematic areas within the main production in terms of the title. Be clear on that because when you're dividing it now to TikTok, you want to give equal importance to each one of those 3 things. So you come up with a storyboard for, um, let's say, the production. That's episode 1, and that would become your week 1 job. What you should have done this week, so that you have something to enter into your journal. The second thing you need to do, and that can be week 2 if you like, but the sooner you get it done, the better. But it can be week 2 to then come up and produce your character list. There's already a character list. Um, I showed you the characters. We already have that. So you can see how to adopt them or adapt them. If you want to adapt them, no problem. If you want to adopt them, no problem. The idea is that you need to produce a character that's equally strong so that you can have something to show. And then finally, you'll come to, yeah, well, it's those two areas which are key. The other small things, but those are the two areas which are key. And once that's worked out, you're good. But the third element you need to work on is the comic. And again, use storyboarder just to lay out the comic. Comics are different from productions, but lay it out in a way that will show and play to the strengths of the comic format. We'll end up hosting that on the comic on our website, most likely. Okay. So if you're okay, Purity, let me quickly go through Nelly's work. So Nelly, I'll share my screen. Are you still there? We can't hear you.